Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
Greetings and welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. I'm your host, John F. Allen, Tower 1.
Or 2, R.J. Sullivan.
Today we're going to be discussing Stargirl, the new live-action television series on the CW based off the comic book created by Geoff Johns. The character was based off of John's late sister, Courtney, who tragically passed away some years ago. And so he did this as a homage to his sister. This particular character was created by Geoff Johns and Lee Moder. And the TV show stars Brec Bassinger as Courtney Whitmore, a.k.a. Stargirl, Yvette Monreal, a.k.a. Yolanda Montez, Wildcat, Angelica Washington as Beth Chappell, a.k.a. Dr. Midnight, Cameron Gelman as Rick Tyler, a.k.a. Our Man, and we've got Luke Wilson as Pat Dugan, a.k.a. Stripesy, and we see a brief showing of Joel McHale as Starman. There are a bunch of other actors who have roles in this. We won't really get into all of that. You can check our production notes for notes on the show down below. And I'll mention that the music for the show was created by Pinar Toprak. And just for those of our viewers who are unfamiliar with Stargirl, the series follows high school student Courtney Whitmore, played by Brec Bassinger, who discovers a cosmic staff once owned by the Justice Society member Starman and was held for safekeeping by Courtney's stepfather, Pat Dugan, a.k.a. Stripesy, who was at one time Starman's sidekick. Once she obtains the staff, she starts her own costumed identity as Stargirl and assembles a new generation of the Justice Society of America. All right, so just for gut reaction from watching the show, and mind you, viewers, that there are two versions of the show. There's one version that is on the DC Universe, the streaming network for DC, and then there's another version that is on the CW. Now, it airs first on the DC Universe, and then it airs again on the CW. Now, the CW version is a truncated version, so there's about like 10 minutes or so of footage that you will not see on the CW version that is actually on the DC Universe version. I have seen the DC Universe version, and RJ has seen the CW version. So,
and let's mention we're responding to the first hour. That's all that is aired at this point.
Right. Only the first episode has aired of this particular series. So that's what we're going to be speaking on today on this episode. And I just wanted to say that my gut level reaction for the show is that I did enjoy it. I've been a huge fan of the Earth 2 Justice Society of America characters from the time I was a kid up until now. And this is a great homage to those characters. And just for you longtime CW fans, just so you would know that when it comes to the characters here on the show, they are a part of the Arrowverse. At the end of last year's crossover in the Arrowverse, which was titled Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Earth Prime was created, and that was where the Flash and Supergirl and Batwoman all are on the same Earth, along with Superman and Black Lightning. Well, unaware to them, there was another multiverse that was spawned, and the new Earth 2 is where this particular series takes place, just so we can keep the continuity straight for the people who may be watching the shows. All right. What was your initial reaction to this, RJ?
All right. Well, I'm going to clarify my coming into this is very different from John's. I did watch the CW version. Long story short, could not get the app to work in time to get the extended version watched. I don't think it really matters much given the way I'm going to come into this. In many ways, I'm the Muggle here, in the sense that I came in having watched a handful of CW series. I love The Flash. I very much enjoy Supergirl. I'm coming around to Batwoman. That's a conversation for another show. And so I've been watching the CW for a while. I have a general comic book knowledge. I'm much more of a Marvel fan, but Stargirl, I'm coming in cold. I'm coming in knowing nothing about the character or its history. I know about the Justice Society of America in a general sense, but the Golden Age is not something I'm particularly familiar with beyond what's generally discussed that happens to come my way. So I'm probably the one coming in just taking much of this at face value and responding to just what I see within this hour. So I'll say two things off the bat. The first is I generally liked it, and the second thing is that it feels like a 2-hour story, and that the second hour will probably add a great deal to what we have seen so far. So it feels like I'm responding to basically half of a 2-hour something that was intended either to be shown as 2 parts or something that they intentionally have divided up into a 2-part origin tale. So it feels a little incomplete to comment on the first hour when so much has yet to happen, so much clearly has to happen. But that's that's what we're going to be replying to today.
Right. We're not going to critique the show as from a story perspective because this is an ongoing series. So we don't have the full story. We just have this origin of the character leading into following up on what the story actually is about, because right now we only have the basics of that were outlined in the first episode. So once we get to further along in the series, since this is going to be a short series with regards to episodes, we'll probably revisit this at the end of the season and go ahead and talk about it as a whole, maybe break it up into 2 parts later on. So you'll hear us talk about this in a later episode. So don't worry, we'll have opinions and we'll discuss them at this time. Right now, we're just really wanting to discuss overall reaction to the show and then give you our different perspectives from the show based upon our perspectives as fans or as people coming into the show. Now,
absolutely, yeah.
My background with this show, as I said earlier, is that I have been a big fan of the comic books from years ago. I mean, we're talking 35 plus years ago with All-Star Comics, the crossovers from the Justice League of America and the Justice Society of America, and the All-Star Squadron Comics run, which was published back in the 80s. So with that being said, I'm a huge fan of these characters, and I think that they did a good job with Stargirl from the perspective of her comic book origins. It was not something that was gritty or too serious. It came off very much like a comic book show. The special effects for a television series on this were really pretty good. I mean, they spent the right amount of money in the right places to make this look very polished. And RJ and I, having come from a generation of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Incredible Hulk on television, along with the Spider-Man movies and stuff, we know what crappy special effects look like. And
yes, indeed.
We grew up on that sort of thing. So this is definitely something that is very quality. So it's very worth your time if you're into that. The story was well written. I think the characters flowed, and the actors actually had a good dynamic together. specifically Brett Bassinger as Courtney Whitmore, aka Stargirl, and Luke Wilson as Pat Dugan, aka Stripesy. Their relationship is contentious because basically Courtney is pining for her father, who left them, her and her mother, when she was very young, and she's wanting him to come back into her life. But in the meanwhile, her mother's moved on and has married Pat, and he's become her stepfather, and he has a son who he brings into the relationship, named Mike Dugan. He's younger than Courtney, and so she's got to deal with a bit of a bratty younger stepbrother and a stepfather who she feels may be encroaching upon her, trying to replace her dad. And so there's that tension there. And, you know, when it comes to the show, basically she discovers the cosmic staff, and it is drawn to her and is the source of her powers, amongst which, just to give you a brief overview, is flight, energy projection from the staff, and protective force field that she can generate. So those are the little basics of her powers. And she is a powerful character with regards to the staff. It is a powerful weapon. So let's just be clear that, you know, it is not something to trivialize. And one of the things that I want to say about the show is that it is going to introduce a new generation of Justice Society that has new, younger, teenage characters, many of whom are going to be her classmates at Blue Valley High, which is where they attend school. And there will be a new Dr. Midnight, who is a female version of the original male counterpart. There's going to be a female Wildcat, who is also a female version of the original male version. And then there's going to be Hourman, who is the son of the original Hourman. And their powers and abilities are generally going to be very much in line with the originals. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Okay. So I'm coming at it. I think if you're like me, you've heard the title Stargirl and you're like, what's it going to be like just tuning in? That's what I'm going to try to talk about a bit. And my perspective is, when I watch any new show and I don't know anything about it, I just kind of give it a couple of episodes to kind of find itself. Just let it tell me what it's about. And what I really liked, the tone. I live in a small town with businesses that are struggling, where everybody knows everybody else, and all those cliches there's some truth to those cliches. And I really liked in the first few minutes, it had kind of it reminded me of Back to the Future, actually, in tone. You know, the small town, the tight little school. In this case, we've got the newcomer moving in from one neighborhood to another. She's not too happy about it, and she has to get used to a new school. Of course, there's all the cliques. There's all these things that you kind of expect, but I thought played out very well. You have our character, Luke. I'm sorry, he's Pat. It's Luke Wilson's the actor. Pat Dugan is the character. He's got a secret, and we kind of know what that secret is because we started off with a flashback. And then he kind of meets some of the other folks in the town. I wasn't really playing much of the guessing game. I figure most people have a past. They're going to present a lot of that. There's just so much to take in when you're just letting a show tell you what it's about. But I like the optimistic tone. I like the kind of cozy feeling that it had. It was filmed in bright colors in the daytime, and even at night it was very bright and popped like a comic book. I liked all that a great deal. I found Courtney very likable. The conflict between Courtney and the stepdad, Pat, of course, is what you would expect. They're not getting along when we start off. And then eventually as she comes to her powers and realizes how Pat is tied into that, of course they become a little bit tighter. I like the which one of these is the mom? Is she on the list?
Amy
here?
Smart is the actress who plays Barbara Whitmore, who is Courtney's mother.
Okay, thank you. So she only had a handful of scenes, but they presented the conflict very well, very tightly. You were well. They brought you right in, set everything up very quickly, and got on with the story. So I did have one quibble. It bothered me in some points, which I've talked to with John a little bit, and I've been trying to figure out how to kind of communicate this, because I have to talk about coming in cold and some of the impressions I have about the show. I found the staff a little bit off-putting, and I suppose I'm going to reel back a little bit and talk about symbolism and fantasy stories. We're all familiar with the phallic symbol. We all know how that works. We got Conan and the sword. We got He-Man. He has the power. So many strong male characters have some sort of a weapon that is frequently used as a phallic symbol, and we all get it. I don't need to explain it too much. This is a family show, but we understand how that works. For a show that was the title Stargirl, it's a teenage girl. I'm coming in with this idea of watching a show that's kind of aimed at girls. I will say that her staff weapon was a bit off-putting, where it was kind of, for me at times, crossing the border between subtext and text, and I wasn't sure what that text was trying to say. It's kind of like, oh, you have some problems, you have things that you need to get control of. Well, now you've discovered this giant golden glowing phallic weapon which will help you solve all of your problems, and it's big and it's glowing and it's yellow and it's kind of has a mind of its own. And there were a lot of parts where my mouth was kind of hanging open at the presentation of how this was. And coming in cold, I don't know if it's just me or if other people are going to have the same response. I found myself kind of smirking at a lot of it. I thought it seemed a little more obvious than so much of the other fantasy tropes that we've seen. And this is stuff that people are pretty familiar with. I've just never seen it such a blatant male symbol connected with a lady character since maybe Red Sonja, and even the resemblance to what it was symbolizing, it threw me out a lot. And I know that maybe that says something about me, John. I don't know, but I know that you were kind of smirking when I explained this earlier. But I have to talk about my honest opinions here, and that really kind of it definitely made me raise my eyebrows through the midsection when they were showing off the staff. So now I've gotten that out of there. I don't know that there's much more to say about it, but it was a little weird for me. So other than that, I really much enjoyed this hour, and I'm looking forward to see how they walk that line in the second hour and as the series goes on. I certainly think there's plenty here to want to keep watching. As far as you naming off their alter egos and who these characters are, none of that really hit me in the first hour. Like I said, I wasn't playing the guessing game yet. I'm going to let these characters come in and present themselves as they go. So there you go. That's where I saw the first hour of Stargirl. It was a good first hour, just a little odd for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can respect that. And just so our viewers know that we are on the polar opposites of this, that was not something that came to mind when I watched this. First off, as a longtime fan of the character, I know that she inherited this weapon from Starman, who had this weapon prior to this character's creation. It basically, I come from a different perspective with regards to phallic symbols. I think that a lot of times that's something that's inherent with someone who's looking to associate something with a man. And it's not necessarily, in my opinion, a bad thing. And I'm not saying that RJ was saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying that a sword is a weapon that, yeah, I mean, I guess you could, put it into a phallic type thing, but I mean, so a mountain is a naturally formed thing, and some people have tried to say that that's something, or a tower or something. I don't get into that. To me, that's, I mean, and to me, that just doesn't really even register. So that's not to say anything negative. It's just that when I was watching this, I had absolutely no phallic symbolism came to mind whatsoever with me. I knew what to expect, and if it didn't have the staff as the weapon, then I would have been disappointed, and really that would have thrown me out of the show, because it wouldn't have been Stargirl without that weapon. And I don't see it as anything other than she has a weapon, and it's a staff, and primarily as a weapon goes from the history of man, whether you're male or female, if you fought, you either used a stick or a rock.
Yes.
It's pretty much I think that the phallic symbolism in a lot of things has to do with people who are trying to, I don't know, associate something with something till it makes sense to them, or to make some kind of point. I don't really find it to be as important of a thing, and that's just me. And and like I say, no disrespect or anything, but just wanting our viewers to know that we are of a different mind on that,
absolutely,
completely. And that's,
to me. And I'm going to cut in here. The visual to me, I thought went a couple extra steps they didn't have to. And so we've seen Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber, we've seen Conan with the sword, and we all know that He-Man has the power and all this other stuff. I just have never seen it presented big, long, yellow. Okay, all right, this is what we're doing. I was saying that through the midsection of the show. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, so like I said, could be me, but I guess I would have liked maybe a different color or a couple other things. But the other thing I want to emphasize, I do feel like this is the first hour of a 2-hour show. And I think that there's a lot they're going to have to put into hour 2 that could change the perspective of how is this weapon going to be used. We basically saw like a 10-minute training session is essentially what it was. And it was well done visually, to your point. It does have a lot of neat little tricks that I thought were visually presented very well. She's going to be able to use it in a number of ways, but I hope it's going to be about her wits and her abilities as much as her weapon as things go forward. And I have a feeling that that's probably what they will do. But versus, to name a recent example, Batwoman's first hour, I thought this was a much more positive viewing experience. And I'm going in with anticipation rather than kind of bracing myself for, oh boy, here we go, which is Batwoman, although I've come around to like it, was a bit of a slog for the first several episodes. And I don't feel like this is going to be a slog. It's generally optimistic, it's generally bright, and those are all real positive things. So.
I concur with that. Batwoman was, I approached it with trepidation. It grew on me here towards the latter part of the season leading up to the finale. This show comes out the box with high anticipation. It met the marks that I anticipated, and I'm anticipating viewing the rest of the season and enjoying it. I'm actually looking forward to the idea that I will be enjoying it based on what I've seen thus far and what I've seen that is coming. And one note about these particular characters from Earth 2, personal note for me as someone who is a fan of the characters, you other viewers who are fans of the characters will note that there are a couple of characters who are missing from the roster of the Justice Society, one of which is the Golden Age Atom, aka Al Pratt, and Spectre, aka Jim Corrigan. Now, the Spectre did show up in the Arrowverse in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he did pass along his Spectre powers to Oliver Queen. So it'll be interesting to see if Oliver Queen, aka Stephen Amell, actually ever shows up in this particular series. And I think that that would be something that I would like to see in the future, since that particular character of the Spectre was one of the founding members of the JSA in the comics back in the 40s. And I would also like to see the Atom make an appearance, along with some other Earth 2 characters from All-Star Squadron. We won't get into a whole lot of names. There are dozens of them. And it would be interesting to see these characters come to life on the small screen. But one thing that I do hope that they do, and I think that this is something that's been discussed from reports that I have read and heard, is that due to the COVID-19, basically there's going to be truncated seasons of shows. So the next crossover for the CW will be a Batman, Superman type thing, probably utilizing Batwoman and Supergirl mostly. And then
Did you say Batman?
Yes. On the season finale of Batwoman, they introduced the actor who will be the model for Bruce Wayne. And if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I won't spoil it any further, but let's just say that it got interesting at the very end of Batwoman. And so with that, we don't know if we're actually going to see Batman or maybe Bruce Wayne, but we do know that there's a Superman and Lois show that will be coming out in January, starring the actor who played in the Arrowverse.
I've got a lot to say about that. It surprises me that they're going with Superman and Batman, but I'll just leave it at that for now, because that could be another program.
Right.
Batman really surprises me. I thought that was going to be a big CW no-no, but that's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah. They've mentioned Bruce Wayne in the Arrowverse before. His name has come up. Batman, the character, has come up. We just never seen him, other than in Crisis on Infinite Earths, when we saw different versions of him in the multiverse. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach that. But getting back to the thing that I wanted to say about these characters in particular is that hopefully in 2022, when they do another crossover of the shows from the CW, that now they'll have Stargirl as one of those shows. They'll have established 2 seasons worth, or at least a season and a half, of these adventures with this particular character and other heroes from her Earth 2. And it would be interesting for them to do a Justice League / Justice Society crossover from Earth Prime and Earth 2, much like they did in the comics back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when every year there would be a Justice League and Justice Society crossover, where they would come across the multiverse and adventure would ensue. Of course, the villains would be plotting something and they'd have to team up. And that's what the fans wanted to see. And as a fan, I would like to see that realized in the CW shows. And I think that that would be a very interesting dynamic, that annually they have this, and it would spread across all of the shows in the CW network that are the DC shows. And that would include Legends and Black Lightning, Flash, Superman and Lois, Batwoman, and then this show, Stargirl. And that would be something that I would really, really, really want to see as they develop Stargirl and the other characters in the Earth 2 universe, or Earth 2 within the multiverse.
Yeah, another thing I forgot to mention that I think is worth noting is we get some Justice Society flashbacks, and Earth 2, as Stargirl presents it, feels very nostalgic. I mean, it doesn't quite feel like 2020. And it's supposed to be present day, but it does definitely have a nostalgic feel to it. And then when they talk about the Justice Society and they say that that happened 10 years ago, it really has a very old school, almost 50s, maybe even 40s tone to it, which I know it's intentional, but it's an interesting line because they're definitely tapping that on purpose. They want it to feel much older than 2010. I'm looking at that going, there's no way this took place in 2010, and yet that's what they're saying it is. So I wonder if they're maybe being a little loosey-goosey with the Earth 2 idea, that maybe it doesn't quite exist in the same timeline as we do. I'm only theorizing based on coming into it cold. It didn't quite feel like 2020, and those flashbacks definitely did not feel like 2010. Is there anything comic book wise to kind of validate that, or do you think it's just a contrivance that they needed to do to kind of please everybody? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that, it is definitely something for the long-term fans of the Justice Society and Earth 2 characters to feel that this is like something from the Golden Age, even though they have retconned it to be 10 years in the past that the Justice Society was last seen on Earth 2, that it does have that 40s, 50s type feel because that's when the characters originally operated in the comics. But I think that it also speaks to the multiverse. For longtime viewers of the CW shows, you'll know through The Flash that there's a multiverse even before Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that multiverse had Earths that developed in different ways and had different rates of development. So, for instance, you had one Earth, which was Earth 3, that had advanced technology, but the feel and look of it was very antiquated compared to the shows such as Flash and Arrow. So depending upon the development of technology, the rate of development, and so forth and so on that differs between these Earths, you're going to see aesthetics that are going to be different, even though it may be 2020 on Earth 2 and Earth Prime. And in our present reality, even though it may be the same year, it's going to look different because there were different things. It can get kind of trippy. It can get into the butterfly effect. So Earth 2 didn't have a Superman or a Batman. So what does that look like without those characters? How did things change? Did technology change? Did the remnants of Kal-El's ship, which caused there to be alien technology on Earth that is integrated into Earth technology via Superman and Supergirl, if that didn't happen, then how does that change how technology develops? So there's so many different little bitty nuances with them being different Earths with different characters, different people who come into their powers or identities, that there are going to be those differences. And I think that's what they were doing. I think they were doing that, as a homage to the characters' origins and the time frame in which they originated. And I also think that they are making it different from the Earth Prime in such a way that you can tell the aesthetics are different. And I think that is going to differentiate the show. So it's not like you're just walking from Earth 2 to Earth Prime and you're like, oh yeah, I recognize everything. No, it should be a little alien. It should be a little alien, even if it is in the same year. And I appreciate that as a fan. I really do like that.
Well, if that was their intent, then I'd say they succeeded. I got one more comment for you.
Mm-hmm.
Joel McHale.
Yeah.
Do you think he's doing a Ryan Reynolds?
Well, I think that they were fortunate to get him.
Yes,
and I think that his role as Starman on the show is something that is going to be a precipice for other things to occur as this particular show starts to develop, and all the other characters. I think he's like the linchpin in this whole thing, and I think that it's going to be a situation where okay, let's face it, they're probably not going to have the money to have him be a regular. Obviously, he's not going to be a regular, but he's going to be somebody who's going to come back and is going to add a little bit of spice to the show, which I'm looking forward to.
He wasn't in much, but I really enjoyed the few scenes he was in, and it was unexpected. The humor, the approach to the humor definitely reminded me of Deadpool in some instances, and that was a nice surprise. And I hope that we'll see more of that as it goes along.
I'm pretty sure in flashbacks we will definitely be seeing his character as he's so closely tied to the title character. And right. I think that what I also want to see, and I know that they're going to be doing, is flashing back to prior to when the Justice Society was last seen and what leads up to this show coming to fruition. One note that viewers of the show should take heed to is that the villains, the Injustice Society of America, which is the counterparts, the evil counterparts, criminal counterparts to the Justice Society of America, they're still living. They're still operating. They're still around. And this particular episode, you will see them in present day, and some of them are
if you know that stuff.
Yeah, well,
that all kind of went over my head.
Yes.
Intentionally, I didn't really try to play the guessing game too much, but yeah.
Right. Well, some of it would be like Easter egg type scenario for the fans of the characters from the comics, but some of it is like they're giving you something to watch and they're wanting to make sure that the layman might be paying attention. And sometimes the layman might not be looking for something, or it may just kind of gloss over them. And that's fine. It'll be explained later. But for the sharp, eagle-eyed people, they kind of laid it out pretty plainly when the characters' personalities are seen in the very beginning, and then these new characters when the Dugans move into Blue Valley, and we see these other characters pop up. And if you're a fan of TV shows and movies, you know that anytime the camera lingers on someone, then there's some story that is going to be told about their character.
Yeah.
So they've done that several times with several characters in this first episode, and so that was a cue for the viewer to we're going to see something happen with this character.
Yeah, and generally that means more on the rewatch. You know, when you go back and you're like, I see what you did there, because now I've got the knowledge of where it's going. I mean, I could tell they were doing that, but that doesn't mean I was able to connect the dots. But I will. I like any good TV show, I understand they're doing that on purpose.
Right.
So I am looking forward to the rewatch and being able to get more out of it. That's just generally the TV viewing experience these days when you have the larger arc, I think. So yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to close this out to say that I've waited a long time for there to be an accurate portrayal of the Justice Society in live action. They tried to take some Justice Society characters and introduce them on the Arrow series, and I was not impressed at all, really. I thought that it was very jinky, and the costumes, they sucked, and it was a poor attempt. And I think that in this instance, they've learned from their mistakes. Now they've got some growing pains with this show, as I've seen some early picture stills from the characters with regards to the costuming. And let's just say that while Stargirl looks great, there are a couple who hope get an upgrade next season. And I'm pretty sure that they will. They usually do that with CW shows. The characters get upgrades to their uniforms as the show progresses. So From what I've read, this show has been hitting its marks with the viewers. I'm pretty sure that most of the people who are fans of the show are on board, and then I'm pretty sure a large number of people who have just now heard of Stargirl for the first time are on board. Right now on IMDb, it's setting at 7.8 out of 10 of 1,335 votes, so it's doing well.
Yeah,
and I'm pleased and happy with that. So I look forward to seeing future episodes, and like I said, we will tackle this season at its conclusion and give our overall view, get into a little bit more in depth into the character development and all the other story beats and things of that nature. So let me say that I give this episode, because we're just doing this episode, I give this episode 3.5 towers, and it didn't quite make 4 because of what RJ said. It did feel like it is the first part of a 2-part type thing, but believe you me, if it had been where I knew that this was going to be the first part of a, first hour of a 2-hour show, then it would have definitely got maybe 4 and 4.5. And the reason being because the costuming, the acting, the story, the cinematography, the special effects were all on point with this. So it don't take my 3.5 towers as something that I didn't like it. It's just that one little nuance kind of dropped the score a little bit, but it more than makes up for everything else, with everything else that it got right. So that's where I stand on it. What about you, RJ?
Just coming in cold. I'm giving it a 3. Hopefully, as the season progresses, I'll get over my hang-ups, so to speak, and that ranking will go up. But that's a 3. That's a recommendation from me. I think if you're just looking to kill an hour and have a good time, I think you're definitely going to be able to do it here. I think it's a promising start. I don't have a lot that I'm anticipating, rather than just let the show tell me what it is, and hopefully have a good time as we go. And I look forward to talking about it on the other side. I anticipate my rating will go up. It's just right now I don't know exactly what it's doing. I don't know exactly where it's going. It's playing with some well-mined tropes, and that's okay. It can definitely do that. But I'm looking forward to it finding its own identity, and then being able to judge it more fairly based on knowing where it's going. So that's where I'm at, just based on half of a pilot. There you go.
All right. Well, you've heard it here. This is our verdict on the first episode of Stargirl from the CW DC universe. It's part of the Arrowverse, just in case you wanted to know that. We will be covering this show again in the future. And please leave your comments on this episode. And please be sure to subscribe to our series, our channel. And I just want you to know that you can reach out to me via johnfallenauthor.com. That's my website. That's where you can find out more about me, some of the other projects that I'm working on, things coming out with regards to my writing and anything else that I've got going on. So you can check me out there. And where can they find you, RJ?
rjsullivanfiction.com. From there, there's a tab that gives you my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, all those fun things, along with a blog that tells you everything that's up with me as a writer, and any projects that I've got going on, such as this podcast. So yeah.
Excellent. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at symbol 2 Tower Show. So make sure that you check us out on Twitter as well. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. And we want to make sure that we hear from you. So please make sure to drop your comments, send us a tweet, just give us a shout out. Be sure to like the video if you did in fact like it, and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, thank you.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds,
a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.